Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining today for this special conversation with Betsy Berkhamer-Creder, CEO of Women on Boards. I just want to briefly talk to you all about this initiative, the broader initiative, and then pass it over to Betsy for some comments, and then I'll come back and ask her a number of questions that you all kindly provided when you registered, as well as a couple of my own. I want to let everyone know that Women on Boards has a number of very valuable virtual workshops that Betsy runs herself, as well as other senior members of that staff. That we will send some information about that after this, as well as the recording of this conversation. And also there's the upcoming national Women on Boards conversation that is occurring locally in a number of cities across the US, Mexico, London, Europe. So we encourage you to also check that out, become a sponsor, join, and be a part of that conversation. It's a really exciting annual event. So with that, thank you all, alumnae of German Marshall Fund leadership programs. Some of you all know about this initiative, but for those of you that do not, my name is Joanna Ridgway. I am a Marshall Memorial Fellow from 2012. I am a managing director and regional head of mid-corporate banking at Santander Bank. And I also spearheaded this corporate diversity initiative for German Marshall Fund alumni. And our goal is twofold. It's one, to provide actionable, useful training to pursue either a corporate or large nonprofit board seat for all women within this network. And also, just as important, if not more important, is just to connect the women of this network together to foster, maintain, and grow connections. I think there are a lot of things we can do together to help promote one another. And my goal is someday we're going to be recommending each other for corporate board seats. So please be a part of this initiative. There's a number of people already that have been very involved in our summit in 2019, the planned summit that we've unfortunately had to postpone in Paris this past April. So this workshop is the beginning of a series of virtual events that we will host to continue this initiative, continue that connection, and we invite you to be a part of that. I would like to thank a few people that have been very involved in this from the beginning: Kristen Laughlin, Vicki Blanton, Chelsea Collier, Clemence Bastien, and some people on the MMF side, including Melanie Whittaker and Mary Reich. So thank you, everyone who's been a part of this. With that, I'm pleased to introduce Betsy, who is the CEO of Women on Boards. It's the leading educational and advocacy group driving gender balance on corporate boards. Betsy is a successful business owner herself, having built and sold one of the largest independent PR agencies in Southern California. She has been running her own executive search firm since 1994. And in January, she was tapped to lead, January 2018, tapped to lead Women on Boards as CEO after spearheading the famous California legislation to improve board diversity. Thank you, Betsy, for being here, and I pass it to you for your comments.
Thank you, Joanna. Good morning, everybody. With that introduction, I think I'm feeling a little weary already. I mean, I feel like, not at all. I'm more energized than ever, and I'm so enthusiastic about our initiative to advance more women to corporate boards, and that is women of all ethnic and racial backgrounds. The timing for diversity in our efforts could not be better. It's the only silver lining I know of with this horrible pandemic and racial injustice focus we find ourselves in, but positive things, at least for women on boards, women of all colors, seems to be coming out of it. And I'm pleased about that. So some good things that we can look at. I hope you're all well and holding up during these times. I can tell you're all in your home offices. This is my home office. Haven't been in my real office for 5 months, and I don't probably expect to be going back very soon. But we forge ahead, and we have so many now virtual events coming up that there's hardly time to catch a breath. But thanks for that introduction, Joanna, and I'm so pleased to meet you. I was taking notes as to who is on the screen already of the list that I have of who you are, and you are a very impressive group. And also, you are all alums, as I understand, of the German Marshall Fund program. So let's just hope that there's a whole wave of German Marshall Fund women who end up on corporate boards, and that's additional marketing for GMF and for your backgrounds. And the experience that you bring is what is most valuable to corporate boards. So let me just give you a few minutes, and then I want a lot of Q&A. This is great opportunity for networking and for each of you to, do all of you know one another, or are you all from different classes?
Most of us are from different classes. And that's one of the goals of this, is to help connect everybody. But there are a couple people that were included today that were recently selected and have not yet traveled on the fellowship. There are some that traveled many years ago, and some kind of over 2012. So no, we don't all know one another, and that hopefully will continue to do so.
Well, I think that it would be looks like a manageable group so far. Could you all identify yourselves, say who you are, what company you're with, and maybe what class you were in briefly, and then I'll get into remarks so we all get to know each other a little better.
That would be great. Mary, I believe we might have to disable the mute or allow people to unmute themselves to speak.
Please.
And I might be able to just call on people directly. Let's see.
And also say what city you're from, please.
Kristen Laughlin, would you like to start?
Yeah, good morning, good afternoon. Kristen Laughlin, I'm from Cleveland, Ohio. I was MMF class of 2018. And I own a small boutique firm here in Cleveland. We specialize in facilitating cross-border financial transactions and strategic partnerships.
Great. We have a nascent event in Cleveland, Ohio. I'll tell you more about that.
Oh, yeah, I'd love to hear about that.
As we get rolling. Thank you, Kristen.
Thank you.
Who's next?
Let's see.
Carrie Carpenter.
Sure. I'm Carrie Carpenter. I'm also from Cleveland, Ohio. I traveled in 2010, so 10 years ago now. And I am the regional manager for corporate affairs for Huntington Bank, which is a Columbus, Ohio-based bank.
Yes. My family's from Columbus, so I'm very familiar with that.
Okay.
Next on the screen is Melanie Whittaker.
Hello, Betsy. My name is Melanie. I'm based in Berlin, in Germany. I work for the German Marshall Fund, and the majority of the ladies that are here with us on the call, I have met during their fellowship, if not handpicked myself. So I'm the head of membership and development for the leadership programs at GMF. And in my spare time, I serve as a trustee in London for a transatlantic drama academy. So.
Fantastic. Well, Melanie, isn't it kind of late back there? I mean, what time is it there?
20 to 7 in the evening, so it's all right.
Oh, not too bad. Well, thanks for tuning in at the dinner hour.
Yeah.
Thank you, Melanie. Ricky Bevington.
Hi there. Can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Hi, I'm Ricky Bevington. I'm here in Atlanta, Georgia. Delighted to be here. I'm so grateful for Joanna and the team's continued leadership. I was in Dallas, was it last year? It feels like a century ago that we were traveling at the inaugural event, which was so enriching and so empowering. So I'm delighted that, you're doing these virtually now. Let's just go with it, right? Women are adaptable. And I take a lot of inspiration just from these conversations. So I am a journalist, a broadcaster, television and radio, spending the bulk of my career in nonprofit media. So I'm here kind of as a non-corporate outsider, and I'm very curious, how somebody like a broadcast journalist might end up on a corporate board someday, because I certainly do not fit the traditional background, but I think I have a lot to offer. So I would be curious. That's one of my questions for you today. Thanks
Great.
so much for making yourself available, Betsy. I'm very grateful.
Of course, Ricky. And Emily Anderson, you're next on my screen.
Hi, everyone. My name is Emily Anderson, and I'm currently in Houston, Texas. I am an engineer, and I currently work for a regional firm here called Half Associates. I was actually living in Cleveland when I traveled with GMF in 2008, and that's where I started my career, but I've done a lot of large infrastructure programs around the world. I've worked in Libya, Australia, Canada, and so I have an engineering and program management background. And I would be interested to find out how I could transfer those skill sets to being on boards as well.
Excellent, excellent. We have an event in Houston too, Emily. Gonna definitely reach out to all of you. Is it Kajai next on my screen? Odedra?
Kajal, nice to meet you. Hello.
Kajal, nice to meet you.
So yeah, Kajal Odedra, I am actually due to join the program. It was supposed to be, I think, end of this year, but I think it'll be sometime, maybe next year. I'm the executive director of change.org in the UK, the petition platform. And I also sit on the board of a charity, Save the Children. Yeah, but I'm really keen to just get some tips about board stuff because sometimes I feel a bit out of my depth.
Have you always been in nonprofits, Kajal?
Yes, although change.org is actually a social enterprise, but yeah, that whole world, yeah.
Whole world. Okay, well, welcome.
Thank you.
Ashley Nelson, looks like you're next.
Good morning, everyone, or afternoon or evening, depending upon where you are in the world. My name is Ashley Nelson. I work for McDonald's Corporation, heading up government affairs and community engagement. From Chicago, Illinois. I was recently selected this spring to take part in GMF, so I have not traveled, and I think just due to COVID, I'm not sure when I will, but very excited to be here. Prior to working at McDonald's, I spent the bulk of my career in government. I worked for Mayor Emanuel, Mayor Daley, President Obama, Chicago Public School System, and various leadership capacities, and I think I've seen what board leadership looks like at the city levels, just because mayors have boards and commissions, but I'm very interested in this corporate aspect now that I am at a corporation. So I'm just excited to hear your words of wisdom today. Thank you for being here.
Oh, delighted to meet you, Ashley, and certainly a lot going on at McDonald's today, that's for sure. Right. Dana Harmon is next.
Hello, everyone. It's so nice to see you all. I'm Dana Harmon. I run the Texas Energy Poverty Research Institute based out of Austin, Texas. My organization works on social equity issues related to the clean energy transition. And we cover primarily the state of Texas, although our work is expanding to parts of the US Southeast as well. I currently serve on the board of the Association of Women in Energy, which is a nonprofit board nationwide. And I also, talking about city boards and commissions, I serve on the Resource Management Commission for the city of Austin. But I'm very interested, these are both nonprofit boards and city government, but I'm very interested in corporate board exposure as well. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation and to learning from you all.
Great, thank you. We have an event in Austin too. I think I've got you all covered for sure. Kendra, good morning. Kendra Taylor? Might be audio only. How about Aisha Miller?
Yes, I'm here. How are you guys?
Kendra, you're there. Oh, good.
Wait, okay.
I am here. I'm actually working from a phone, or a computer that does not have a microphone. I have an old school computer, so I had to dial in on my phone so that.
You look good. You look good.
Thank you. I am Kendra Taylor. I'm a part of the 2013 GMF class, and I am from Atlanta. I live in Atlanta, and I work as a consultant. I've had a couple of decades of work as a consultant. I'm an industrial engineering PhD and served as an associate vice president for a global engineering firm before branching out to start my own consulting firm, Key Efficiencies. I also serve on the board of my nonprofit, the ICME Society, supporting teenagers in improving their decision-making skills. So I'm excited to learn more about board service, and specifically corporate board service. I've had a number of influential women in my life serve on corporate boards, and I've just always thought that that was something that was an aspiration, something that would be of a significant benefit, especially given my experience in the consulting world. So I'm here to learn. Nice to see everyone.
Kendra, excellent. And Aisha Miller.
Yes, hi everyone. This is Aisha Miller, and I apologize, I'm not on my screen. I'm having issues with my computer, and I'm just trying to mitigate those. And I'm from Philadelphia. I sit in Philadelphia. I had the Marshall Memorial Fund in 2017. It's always hard to think back. These years are going by very quickly and weirdly. But I'm from here. I actually am the executive director and senior vice president at Wells Fargo in the social impact and sustainability space. And we work very hard in terms of, trying to increase our impact around the globe, but specifically in the US. I don't currently serve on boards. I have served on boards in my previous career. I get a lot of board requests, especially as somebody in the social impact space at a large corporation. I decline most of them because I just want to be more intentional about how I respond and what's the best place for me to be. And I've also recently been very involved with Wells Fargo's corporate board because we're working on some legal entities that we're restructuring. And I really built some relationships with people on the board and was just very interested in how they got there and, what they're doing and the roles that they're playing. I would like to learn for myself. So that's what brings me here today. Great to see everybody.
And great to have you here. And it's not pronounced Aisha. How do you pronounce your name correctly?
I pronounce it Aisha. Thank you very much. Thanks for asking.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And I think Sarah Jackson just joined.
Hello, hi, this is Sarah. I'm with the Dallas Citizens Council as Vice President of Strategy and Public Affairs and a newest GMF Fellow for this year.
Excellent, excellent. Well, I do have events in every one of your cities, so this is just the beginning of a long-term friendship, my new girlfriends. So I hope that you enjoy what we talk about today. So I'm going to talk very quickly for about 15, 20 minutes, but interrupt with chat and then we'll do a Q&A before we finish at 10:30 my time and various times in your locations. So I forgot to mention that I'm also the author of 2 books. So this is why I'm an expert on women on boards. This is the most recent one, Winning the Board Game, and this is the first one called The Board Game. So it's the Board Game series. I like to think it's a series, but it's so much darn work to write a book, I don't think there's ever going to be a third one. And everything's in here, right? This is the Bible on how to get yourself onto corporate boards and the stories of other women and how they got to their first board. So and I'm talking about public company boards. So for most of you on this call, many of you are familiar with public company boards from having served them, worked with them, known people who serve on them, but you've not yet served on boards, which is just great. You're beginning your journey, and I'm glad to talk to women in their mid-career, as many of you are. Some of you are not yet in your 50s. And don't worry, you will get to your 50s and 60s, I can assure you. And it's not so bad on this side of the Great Divide, but there are good things to look forward to, which is why you want to plan your career strategically, thinking about, and you're all doing this, thinking about navigating your career and your contacts in order to make sure that when you are in your 50s and then in your 60s and then continuing in your 70s, yes, you'll get there too, you'll be able to serve on corporate boards. So first is the why. Why do you want to serve on corporate boards? And why do women especially want to serve on corporate boards? It's because it's the elite level, if you will, of your career, of all that you've done, all the experience you've developed over the years. It's like the ultimate reward. And you are, I hate to say it's like the Senate, but it's like, it is a club of men and women who bring their expertise to run companies. And it is fun to run companies and advise companies. When you're on a corporate board, you do not manage the company. As all of you know, you advise the CEO and senior management on how they will run the company, but you're overseeing, you're helping to determine strategy and vision. And that's why this is not like a job. You're not getting onto a board to manage anything. You're getting on the board to advise the CEO and senior management how to specifically run the company. And why do boards want you? They want your expertise that they may not already have on their boards. They also want, they don't know that they want this, but we say they want the perspective of women, because when women are on corporate boards, Credit Suisse, McKinsey, KPMG, independent research reports that have nothing to do with our women's movement, if you will, independent research has shown that companies are more profitable and more productive when women serve on the board, especially when 3 women are on the board, because 1 is more or less 1, 2 is a conversation, and 3 women actually can back each other up and have an impact on the corporate board. Not in terms of being naysayers, but in terms of being very positive visionaries and strategists about how a company can grow its business, etc. So that's why women bring an awful lot to the corporate boards, even though the guys don't really want us there. And I say that, and I want you to know that I love men. I've been married to one for a long time. My business partner's a man. My clients are men as well as women. I love men, but they have certain ways of doing things that we women need to participate in order to make sure that our perspective is seen and heard. And companies are not only more productive and more profitable, but the workforce is better engaged. The women who work at that company, when women are on the boards, are generally better served, or have a chance to be better served by the women on the board. Served is the wrong word. Heard or paid attention to. Women tend to not do knee-jerk reactions. They tend to not close a factory that would put 3,000 people out of work and families out of work when this is a terrible general statement, I understand, but sometimes boards are willing to do whatever is most profitable, whatever is an immediate money-saving device, if you will. Women are much more thoughtful, as we know, and bring their perspective to corporate boards. And just bring another, the factory may still be closed, but at least women have talked about, well, you know, we're putting 3,000 people out of work. So let's think about this. Is there another way we can do this? So, you know, you as women have been very successful in your careers, and you know what it's like to be bringing the other perspective. Same with having women of color on boards. Obviously, women of color are going to bring more perspective than just Anglo women on board. So the more women of all racial backgrounds that we can bring to, we as women can bring to corporate boards, the better. And certainly now is the time. And for those of you who are women of color on this call, you present a twofer, if you will. You're a woman and a woman of color, and that's what boards are looking for right now, because they can check 2 boxes. So that's one reason that's a why for you to get on boards. Also, later on in your career, it will be important that corporate boards pay money. They pay their board members. And that's because you spend a great deal of time, even though it's only quarterly board meetings, or if you're on a bank board like Huntington, the board meetings are monthly. That's a lot of time that you put in order to be a board member and be a productive board member. There's a lot of reading, a lot of preparation. So you earn your money, but you could earn all, the board members of any one company are all paid the same. There's no pay inequity on corporate boards, by the way. Men are paid the same as women. And the only difference is when a person, man or woman, chairs a committee, they're paid more than they for extra duty, if you will. So the compensation can range in a private company, which is not publicly owned, about $50,000. Many of you might end up on a private company board, especially Ricky, a journalist who has not been in a public, or you haven't been responsible for P&L on a public company board, perhaps. Well, I know from what you said. So private companies are another place to enjoy being a business leader and giving good input to private companies, which are, as I say, private companies are not publicly held. It's nothing to do with government. Private companies are owned by the CEO or the founders and the investors, private equity companies as well, whereas public companies are owned by shareholders. And so that a private company, 50,000 maybe, nice money to make on the side in addition to your own job. Public companies, $75,000, $100,000, some are $150,000 of the levels that all of you and I would be on. We're not going to be on Fortune 500 boards. We're not going to be on McDonald's boards, for example, or we're not going to be on General Motors. But we can be on smaller companies, some of which you've probably not heard of. So, and those probably not more than $150,000. But if you were on two boards at your in your 50s and 60s, and then when you might retire from your own company, I'll never retire from my own company, but from what you're doing at 60 or 65, then you have nice income from being on corporate boards. And the compensation is generally half cash and half stock. And you do have to pay taxes on the cash that you earn. So sometimes this is not a way for you to, quote, make a living, but it's a way for you to supplement your living and to build wealth at whatever level. And that's what the men have been doing for years, decades, I say millennia, because men bring their friends onto their boards. And when they give their friend a board seat, that for their protege or somebody at their golf course or somebody they've known since their university days, it's the nicest gifts they could ever give them, because they're giving them a nice piece of change and income every year, and stock that grows, hopefully grows if the directors don't take the company bankrupt for some reason. But it's the money, and that's why the guys don't want to step aside and they don't want to leave. They consider it, it's like, unfortunately, the Supreme Court. They think that this is a lifetime appointment. Well, shareholders don't think anymore that this is a lifetime appointment for the Friends of the CEO. Shareholders, as you all know, many activist shareholders are putting forward campaigns to say, we don't like the way the company is going, and we have a slate or two or three board members that we would like to see you elect to the board. Now, yes, board members are elected every year, but that's sort of a perfunctory action. The annual meeting, many of you hold stock as in your 401ks, you hold stock, or your financial advisors have purchased stock for you, and you get a proxy statement, and that's the notice of the annual meeting, and the directors are listed in the proxy statement, and you are asked to say yes or no, or throw it out. Many people throw it out. I say, please don't throw out the proxy statements. Please look at them and see if there's a woman on the board, and if there isn't a woman on the board, write a letter to the CEO and tell them you're a shareholder, and why isn't there a woman on the board? And that is the kind of thing that we, in our very subtle activism, are doing in order to continue to raise the awareness of the guys, the CEOs, the board members. So about 5 more minutes, and then I'm going to open up for questions. This is why you want to be on corporate boards. And then the other reason is just plain fun. And the relationships that you build are business relationships for you. You become a much better rounded executive. All the women I interviewed 53 in this most recent book and 58 in the first book. All of them say they become much better, well-rounded executives. And that's how they convince their CEO that they should serve on boards while they're still working at their jobs. And they, as well-rounded executives, they understand how other companies do things. Many women have worked for the same company for 25 years, and they want to they don't know how other companies do things. And for CEOs who want to advance women at the top of their ranks, they want them to serve on other corporate boards. So they bring back best practices from other companies and can extend the business relationships of their own company where they work. So it's fun. It's making you a better, well-rounded executive. I think that's two adjectives on the same theme, right? And it extends your business networks. And interestingly enough, your vast business networks of contacts, especially through the German Marshall Fund and international contacts around the globe, are valued assets that you bring to a corporate board. And when I do my workshop, next one starts Monday, by the way. It's a very short workshop. It's just a Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 2-hour sessions on each day, and that's it in 1 week. And we talk about the how to market yourself and including your vast network of contacts as one of your number one assets. So I'm going to give you the 3 keys to getting on a corporate board, and then I'm going to open for questions. The 3 keys are these. It's in the book, it's in my workshop, it's in everything I say. So the number 1 key is your business experience. And your business, everybody here in this group from GMF has business experience or understands business that you could bring to a corporate board. So, yeah, and this is the thing, this is probably the only time in one's career where age is a good thing. And where experience of 25, 30 years in engineering, as several of you have said, or in banking, etc., or in government relations. Government relations is something that boards want now. Or human resources. Never before, 3 to 5 years ago, have boards ever put human resources, men or women, on their boards because they consider that an expense. It's an expense side of the business, human resources, or marketing, or frivolous things like that they have to have. Whereas production, sales, and hardcore operations and finance, those are the experiences that they've been looking for traditionally, or previous CEOs who can advise this CEO about how to run a company. Well, shareholders are our friends. Shareholders are the ones who are insisting that boards bring more experience, more diversity, more gender perspective than boards have previously had in order to grow the business, in order to be a strategic and enlightened company. This is strictly a business issue, women. This is not representation. We're not trying to get representation of either race or gender on corporate boards. We're talking about the business advantage to that company of having women on board. So that's the number 1 thing that you're bringing, your number 1 asset. Included in that asset is your vast network of contacts in your industry. You'll most likely get on a corporate board in your own industry, at least the first one. You know, a lot of women say, I'm passionate about something else, or I love the food business, but you've been an engineer in infrastructure building for 36 years. You know, you're not going to move to the food business right away, but you can be on a company board in your own industry, and then build on that, and with the contacts that you make, expand to some other industry later on. So this is a long journey, women. So that's the first bullet. That's the first important thing, your value added experience. You're not going to get on a board where there's no value needed for the experience that you have. The second bullet is prior board experience. Now this is like the chicken and the egg. How do you get prior board experience if you can't get on a corporate board? So the prior board experience is needed because boards don't want to have on-the-job training. They don't want directors who don't know how to be on a board. And being on a board includes the fiduciary responsibility understanding, the collegiality of a board, and how board dynamics work. You know, just even some of the basics, that you don't blurt out important things in the boardroom without having socialized it or without having done some research to find out, you know, this particular issue that you want to focus in on. What is the company really doing? Longer story, but they want somebody who already knows what a board does. Now, because we women have not been on corporate boards for the most part, what counts then is our nonprofit board experience. So it's very important in your steps of getting on to corporate boards that you serve on nonprofit boards, or as several of you in this group run nonprofits. So you understand board dynamics. And keep those words in your mind. You understand board dynamics. Therefore, you have prior board experience. And even if, like in McDonald's case, even if you're presenting to your own company board once a year or maybe every quarter, you're presenting to your own board, that's counts as prior board experience. You are exposed to how the board works. So this is what you use in talking about yourself. First is your industry experience. Second is your prior board experience. And then third is the contacts that you bring and the contacts in your industry. One of the easiest boards that you can get on is your own industry trade association board. And very simple to get on a board. Even in government affairs, you can get on your own industry trade association. It's the easiest one to get on, and they need you because most people don't want to be on the industry trade association board. But several women I know from our book and others through 2020 Women on Boards started out on their industry association board. And why? Because you make so many contacts in your industry. And then the guys see you in action. So the contacts are so important because the bottom line is, I'll stop here. Bottom line, you are the ones who are going to get yourselves on corporate boards. You are going to maneuver your own network of contacts, people you met 5 years ago, 10 years ago, who have seen you through your career, people who know you. And it could be your brother-in-law you see every Thanksgiving, for example, and sit at the table with, but he has no idea of your experience that would make you qualified for a corporate board. Why? Because you never get into that conversation with them. And your best friend doesn't even know the depth of what you do at your company, doesn't know your industry, your value-added industry experience, doesn't know your prior board experience, doesn't know how valuable and how vast your contacts are. And then these are the assets that you would bring to a corporate board. So you're going to start talking about this. This is what we go through in great detail in our workshop, talking about, and Joanna's nodding, she's been through this and grilled on her, how she uses her value-added statement. I call it your value-added sound bites. When you're at a cocktail party, it's long before you'd ever get to a board interview. I'm talking about getting yourself positioned to be considered for a board. So the bottom line key is no search firms are going to call for your first board. The only people who are going to recommend you are people who know you. Oh, and then lastly, I'll tell you about this. Joanna mentioned that I'm responsible. I wrote the law in California. I and my colleagues and women business owners from the National Association of Women Business Owners in California took the law 7 years ago. It took us 7 years to get this law passed. I'll give you the long story some other time. But the main thing was that we had to prove the business reason for doing this, but we also demonstrated that people don't get hired. You don't get hired anyway. People don't get selected for boards, men or women, by any kind of application process, by any kind of normal kind of job search. No, and board searches are never public because companies keep their board search process very confidential. Why? Because if Wall Street were to hear about some board member or some candidate being considered, it could affect the stock price. It could affect the whole reputation of the company. Some activist shareholders could get involved and say yay or nay to this particular consideration. They keep it very close to the vest, and that's okay. It's a way that the process works. But as long as women know the game, that's why I called the books the board game. As long as you know the board game, you can maneuver your contacts so that you can be recommended for a board. So what I was getting to about the law was, I thought, then the law was passed September of 2018, and the requirement was that for the year 2019, the first year, every public company in California had to have at least one woman on its board. And by the end of 2021, the end of the 3-year window, there have to be at least a minimum of 3 women on their board, on every public company in the state. And the result of 2019, the whole first year, was that 200 women were added to the 400 boards that exist, Russell 3000, and a total of 600 boards actually, because there are many companies that are smaller than the Russell 3000. We, 2020 Women on Boards, tracks the Russell 3000 companies. I haven't told you about that yet, but there's so much to tell you. I need to stop talking. But so what happened was, I thought that search firms were going to get assignments, including Berkemar Clayton, my firm. I didn't do it for that reason, but I thought Korn Ferry, Russell Reynolds, all the search firms that you know of, the big ones, we're going to get lots of board searches looking for women and women of color. Didn't happen. But what happened was the CPA firms, the banks, and the law firms that worked for those companies whose boards needed a woman, they got the call. And they got the call from the CEO or the nominating committee. Hey, Joe, we got to get a woman on this board. We don't want a woman, but we got to find one. Do you have a retired partner, somebody who's about to retire, somebody who will be very collegial and fit into our unique board dynamics, etc., who you would recommend? And that's the word, recommend and refer, because boards are built on relationships of trust. Boards want to know that they have a person, man or woman, on that board. Every person has good business judgment, will be reliable in a crisis, will bring valued experience and contact to that board to help the company grow. And they want to know somebody that they've seen in action. So they want to know the background of that person, which is the only reason they hire a search firm. They hire search firms to vet candidates they already know. So this is the inside secret, women. And it was the bankers, the CPAs, and the attorneys who recommended those 200 and more women who were named to boards last year in California. And the reason the companies had to name women to the boards, because for the first time, the law said that we would, that the Secretary of State would bill them a $100,000 fine if they did not comply. And then the big fine is going to happen in the end of 2021, when Secretary of State will invoice them $300,000 for each opening if they don't have 3 women on the board. It could cost a company $900,000 if they don't have women on the board. So that gets the attention. Every other law or effort in the country with any other state has only started out with like our law and then was watered down to only submitting a report about diversity, what the company is doing about diversity to the state secretary or whomever is the enforcer in each state. Even Washington State, there was a lot of hoo-ha or happiness about the law that just passed Washington State a month ago, which said 25% women required on every board. Well, the very next line said that nobody picks up in the news media. The very next line said, well, if you don't want to do that, however, you can just file a report about your diversity efforts. No other state had any financial fine, any pain, any enforcement for this effort. And I don't expect any other state to have any law. I really don't. We've had such a positive influence and ripple effect around the country. And by the way, Germany, as you know, has a 30% mandated federal quota put into practice by Angela Merkel in 2015. And we use that in our business rationale for getting the law passed. Anyway, I got to quit talking. I'm sorry, but I want to give you everything and then answer questions that you can pummel me with. And then Joanna, however else you want to follow up, I'm always open to questions.
Thank you, Betsy. I think we're going to have you back for another visit if you're okay with that. We only have about a little less than 15 minutes, so I'll keep the questions between me and you just to make sure we stay focused. And we just have time for a couple, but I think one really good piece of information, and by the way, I think you've just recruited a whole lot of new passionate advocates to the cause to get some laws written to advocate for women on boards. But can you talk about the realistic path to a board seat, so that it takes years of groundwork and years to get there, and also just how you bring it up in casual conversations? So in your workshop that I attended, I think one of the most compelling things you shared is you really just have to let people know that you're interested. So don't be shy about that. So maybe a couple of things of that nature, and then maybe some key trends you're seeing on what kind of skill and experience that people are looking for. You mentioned HR, but there are some other things, I think, like cybersecurity and ESG, and now in the COVID, I think that's so important. You mentioned how to deal with a crisis. So maybe those will be some topics you could address, and I will be sure and alert you when we just have a couple minutes left. I would love for everyone to look at the camera and smile before you have to go, so we can get a shot. So
we definitely want a photo. Well, the background that boards are looking for right now, and I think Joanna mentioned I do own a search firm, a retained search firm, so I do board searches and I know what they're looking for. Human resources background is not because of well, it's because of workforce management, of course, and understanding of diversity issues with all companies today, but it's also because of compensation. Now, there are three main committees on a corporate board, and this is what you'll use in your high impact statements. Those three main committees, or standing committees, are always on a corporate board, are the Audit and Finance Committee, generally called Audit without the finance word, but it's the Finance and Audit Committee, and they are the compliance experts. And then the second, and equally important, is the Compensation Committee. That committee is responsible for the compensation of the CEO and the senior management of the company and the board members. And the reason that that women are at least in good positioning to be asked to be on corporate boards, if people know about their HR and their compensation experience, because the guys don't want to be messing with the compensation of their buddy, the CEO. So they want to bring on somebody else who has the compensation experience. After all, packages are very, very complex now, from long-term incentives and stocks and RSOs and vacation and things that you don't even know about, that the CEOs are being paid, and perks. And so they want the compensation to be handled by somebody else and not by the guy who's playing golf with the CEO every week. So oftentimes the woman comes onto the board as a compensation expert, and she serves on the comp committee, and pretty soon, like immediately, she's the chair of the compensation committee, because it's very complex. It's something the guys don't want to do, and they don't want to mess with their buddies' compensation. That's the real underlying reason. So your friends with HR senior level compensation experience have a good chance of getting on board. Digital marketing is sought now, as you can imagine, and many of you are very, very knowledgeable about social media and how that's important to strategic planning for corporate boards, strategic marketing, vision, and deciding, how social media is going to be used, whereas the old white guys have no idea, and they still have their secretaries print out their emails for them. So that's why digital marketing is really important on corporate boards. Cybersecurity, you mentioned, I think that's obvious. And government relations, which is very good for our McDonald's person. Government relations, companies that are regulated and or have a lot of contracts with federal contracts, they need government relations and compliance experts. And then the third committee is called ESG. And that stands for Environment, Social, and Governance. And unfortunately, I wish they had called it, but they never thought of it, or they avoided it, calling it ESGD for diversity, because they throw diversity and workforce diversity under that ESG headline, committee name to be specific. But if you're an engineer, and have experience in the environment, for example, or sustainability, and building, you would fall under that ESG committee. So those are the three big ones. Then of course, enterprise risk can be either a separate committee or the whole board is considered the enterprise risk committee because board members are responsible for representing the shareholders and orchestrating the strategy of the company so that it doesn't get in trouble. And I don't mean ethical trouble, I'm talking about risk trouble, supply chain issues, etc. So there's so much that the board oversees, but the board doesn't do things like this, as I mentioned. But these are where you would fall. So to Joanna's question about what you say at a cocktail party, you bring up, Joe, hi, it's so nice to see you. I haven't seen you in 5 years. Gee, I understand you serve on a corporate board, or you have friends who serve on a corporate board. I'd just like you to know that I intend to serve on a corporate board as soon as possible, and I am seeking the right corporate board for me, public company board. Or if you happen to be only, as several of you mentioned, looking for a nonprofit board, you could say that too, but that's just assumed. But I don't want you to ever say, I'm looking for a paid board, because then the guys think, oh, this woman is naive, and she, we all know that public company boards are paid. So you don't have to say it. You just say, I've spent many years on nonprofit boards, but I'm looking to serve and bring my my years of experience in XYZ industry. And you can even say how big that industry is. I'm looking to bring my experience to a corporate board, and I have prior board experience. Remember the second bullet, prior board experience in major nonprofits, United Way, etc. here in your city. And then you can also say, and I bring a vast network of business contacts that I could bring to the board. So I'm looking for the right one for me. And I know that my industry experience is just conversational. I know my industry experience is mostly my industry, but there may be an avenue that you would suggest, Joe, that I might look at. Or if one of your friends, I know that women, you can say this, I know that boards are looking for women directors right now. So Joe, if one of your friends calls you and is looking for a qualified senior level woman executive, I mean, you may as well say what, who you are in this conversational high impact statement, that you don't call it a high impact statement to the guy, but you say, you remember that your 3 bullets. And then you say, I'm looking to, please remember me, because, and then you close with, I could immediately serve on the audit committee, or I could immediately serve on the compensation committee, or I could immediately serve on ESG. And then they know what you're talking about. They think this woman is talking board speak. This is what we train people in our workshop. Very, very in-depth. So that's what you say. And then the guys take it from there. You could also say, I would really welcome, may I send you my board profile, which is just, it's your resume's at the bottom. It's a turned around version of your resume. You put your career history at the bottom, and any board history, with board history meaning nonprofit, as well as Chamber of Commerce or other board experience, industry association board experience you've had, you'd put that at the top. So that's the general difference. The board experience at the top and the career chronology at the bottom. And then you say, Joe, would you mind taking a look at my board profile? I'll email it to you, and I would welcome your counsel. They love to be asked for their advice. But don't ever ask them to be a mentor or a sponsor. It's just too much responsibility, and they want to run the other way. But if you just ask them to take a look at your board profile and give a couple of comments, and then Joe, if somebody ever calls you and looking for a woman, please think of me. And that's how you leave it. Very short, very sweet. I made it longer, but that's what you say. And Joanna's really good at this now, because she's been through the workshop. She knows, right?
I can highly recommend these workshops, and that's something we'll send some information out to everyone about after the conversation. And we are at 12:27, so we're just a couple minutes delayed till we have to end. So may I suggest we do our quick photo first, and then Betsy, if you have some parting tips or maybe a key, something that you want us to leave with, or maybe you think that gets in the way of women pursuing a seat. There's that imposter syndrome. I know it's hard to cover any of these topics in a short period of time, but if there's one thing you would you want people to take away from today. Would love for you to share that, and then we'll wrap up. So real quick, Mary, if everyone can just look at their screen and smile, and we'll take a picture. So I'll just count down 1, 2, 3, and good. Thanks so much. All right.
Want to take a second one just in case?
Sure. We'll take a second one, and I'll count to 3, and then we'll hold for 3, even though that feels awkward, but welcome to the virtual group photo experience. So 1, 2, 3. And thank you so much. Betsy, what would you like to leave us with today? And as a reminder, I will send out the information about your workshops to everybody. And we do hope to have you back and would love to hear from you again.
The closing thought is that every one of you has a chance, and that there's not just in California, but this nationwide movement to have more women and women of color on corporate boards. So go in with that. I mean, go to a cocktail party with that thinking, or a business meeting where you might, or a virtual cup of coffee where you might be talking, and always talk about this. Always say, just one of the best analogies that one of my friends came up with. She said, look, if you got divorced and it's been a couple years and you're ready to start dating, you want to get married, you're going to tell everybody you know, man or woman, that you're looking for to get married again, and you'd like to have a date with their friend. It's the same thing. So you're going to say this all the time. I intend to serve on a public company board, and that is seeking a woman with my experience, and here's what my experience is. Start to think of it in a positive way. As you know, guy, you don't have to be an expert. You don't have to be an expert. And guys say they are experts when they don't know 20% of the topic. And you women, we women feel we have to be, to say you're an expert, we have to know 100% or more. And don't worry about that. Just start saying, I'm seeking the right public company board for me, or the right nonprofit board, or the right private company board for me. So I just want you to be optimistic and start carrying the word forward. And yes, think about the workshop. Think of it it's going to take a couple years. And for some of you early in your career, it's going to take 20 years, but just be planning that this is your ultimate goal. And this is what you're talking about all the time. And it'll pay off in ways that even if you don't end up on a corporate board, it'll pay off in ways that people will be thinking about you, and you'll be more visible in your career, and more thought of as a person who's thinking ahead. You're being strategic. But remember, it is your contacts and your effort that's going to get you on a corporate board. No one else is going to be responsible for getting you there. Just you, like always, right? So I hope that's encouraging, and we will definitely continue our communication. And what I'd like to add you all, or go to our 2020wob.com website, you'll see our global conversation that you can attend. I'd really like to reach out to you and have you know about each of our cities, which is listed on our global conversation on the website 2020wob.com, and Joanna will be sending that out. And you can sign up for our mailing list. Just fill in your name on the front page there. So good luck to all of you. It's a pleasure meeting you.
Thank you, Betsy, so much. And for everyone on the call, we will be continuing this series with other speakers, and we'd love to have Betsy back. So please stay tuned, and please reach out to me directly if you'd like to be part of this initiative. We're always looking for people to help host, sponsor, or come up with ideas for speakers. Thank you, Betsy, so much. Have a great rest of the day.
Lovely to meet you. Thank you.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.